Hello and welcome to this free Linux course. In this course, you're going to be learning Linux from the ground up, but before we start, I just want to introduce myself very quickly. My name is Misha Vandenberg. I'm a senior DevOps engineer from the Netherlands, and I've been using Linux for well over a decade at this point. I've been using Linux professionally for over 5 years now, and learning Linux has completely changed my life. And that is why I'm also sharing this knowledge with you. So what is Linux? Linux is what you call an operating system. So if you are watching this as a complete beginner at Linux, then you may not know that a computer runs because of the software that is on that computer, right? So you're maybe watching this from a computer that is running Windows or Mac OS. Now, the most people don't even know that you have the freedom to change that operating system. So a computer by itself is just a machine that cannot run without any software on it. And that software that makes the computer run is called an operating system. Now, Linux is an operating system that you can install on your computer and use as a normal daily driver. So what you see here on my screen, this is Linux. And I've been using Linux for my daily machine for several years now. And the reason why this is so great is I'm going to get into that in the next section. But Linux, not only is it completely free, it is also a very lucrative skill to learn. So if you can become a Linux engineer or a system administrator and be paid for your Linux skills. So this learning Linux is not just for fun, but also it can be a very lucrative decision for your career. Now, the best thing about Linux, besides it being free, is it's a operating system that is called what is called open source. This means that everyone in the world can go and look at the actual code of Linux. Okay. So if you want to know how Microsoft Windows is made, you cannot go and look at the internals of Windows because it is what they call proprietary. Microsoft keeps their code closed. Nobody can see it unless you're working for Microsoft. So nobody really knows what's going on. Linux, however, is open source. So the code is available for free to anyone. So you can go and look and see what's actually programmed into the operating system. This also means that the whole world can come together and build this system together and contribute, because that is fundamentally how Linux is being created. Linux was created in the 90s by a man called Linus Torvalds, and I'm going to, in the next modules, going to share a little bit more history about that. But basically, at some point, he started writing this operating system, and he was onto something, and then the whole world came together and started collaborating and building Linux from the ground up. And that is how Linux is built and made. So it's free and open source. So this also means that you get a lot more freedom when you are running this operating system, because there's no money-making incentive involved here. Microsoft wants you to use Microsoft programs and Microsoft Windows because they make money from that. So why should you learn Linux then? The thing is that because Linux is free and open source, it's not just useful for people like you and me who are running this on their laptops. It is useful for people who are running what is called a server, okay? So if you write a program or an application, for example, a website, that needs to run somewhere, right? You need to run your code on a machine, and that machine is called a server. Now, most of the world's servers, so most of the internet, is run on Linux. So all of the world's top 500 supercomputers and all of the world's stock exchanges, for example, all run on Linux. So in other words, all the important computers in the world, all the machines that are handling traffic, Google, big websites, newspapers, everything, all of that is being run on Linux. So if you learn how to use Linux and how to manage Linux, this means that you're going to be a very useful person in the tech world because almost every machine runs it. And therefore, if you have the skills to manage those machines, people are going to pay a lot of money for your skills. So I already mentioned that because you Linux is good to learn because it's free, because you can install it on any machine. This also means that you can take an older machine that you have lying in your closet and you can breathe new life into it with a free operating system because Linux is very efficient. An old laptop that maybe cannot run Windows 11 anymore because it's too heavy can work just fine if you install Linux on it. So it's completely free. But the second thing is privacy. And I'm going to be linking a video below this video where I go deeper into this. But if you use Microsoft Windows, for example, then most of the keystrokes that you are entering on Windows are being sent to Microsoft so that they can analyze what's going on. They will take diagnostic reports from your computer and send that to Microsoft. So a lot of your personal data is constantly being shared with Microsoft. And this is an increasing trend where you're just giving away more and more and more of your data, and these companies know more and more about you. And most people don't see that as a problem. I personally do think that's a problem. Most people will say, I have nothing to hide. Well, if you have nothing to hide, give me your email password and let me just read all of your emails. Most people get a little bit uneasy then, right? So, but the good thing is Linux is completely private. There's no telemetry, there's no stuff being sent to other people. You have complete control over what's running on your system. But this also requires a little bit of a higher skill level, okay? I mean, almost anyone in the world can learn Linux, but you will also gain more computer literacy, as I call it. You will become better at using computers if you learn Linux. And in today's world, where we spend 12 hours a day working with computers, with the rise of AI, I think it's a very useful and important skill to know how to use a computer properly. And there's no better way of doing that than learning Linux. So there's plenty of YouTube videos, there's plenty of courses out there. So why this course? Well, as I said, I've been using Linux for over a decade, and I've been using it professionally for 6 years now. Now, I had some very good mentors in my career. I did not study computer science or anything like that. I actually was working as a nurse, and through a ton of effort and self-study, I managed to land my first tech job. And then I started using Linux professionally. And in that process, I was mentored by some people who gave me a very, very good base in using Linux. And this was so good that there are so many elements that you see in free Linux courses that are simply not being taught. And when I watch these fundamentals courses, I see there's a lot of things lacking. So I decided to create my own, and I teach people to land tech jobs for a living. So I have plenty of experience with teaching people, and based on that feedback, I was also able to design a course that is more in line that beginners will pick up easier. Now, the second more important thing why you should consider this free course is because it's very completely focused on the command line. So if you've ever seen any of my videos, then you will know that I do almost everything on the command line. I use Vim for my text editing. I use even like web browsing from the command line. And I do this because it makes me more efficient and focused and faster at running the computer. I can operate my computer with only my keyboard. I almost don't need a mouse anymore. Okay. And I'm going to teach you Linux from this perspective, from this idea of creating the most efficient workflow possible based on the command line. And I don't see many people teaching that. They will more rely on this graphical side of Linux, and which is fine. but you don't really learn Linux and how to use a computer properly if you don't use the command line. Now, don't be intimidated. I'm really going to take you by the hand and teach you this from the ground up. So I'm going to explain what a command line is, what a terminal is, how all of that works. So it's based on my experience from mentoring over 1,000 people into tech careers right now. I took that experience and poured all of that in a Linux course uh, based on my own 10 decade of experience and the mentoring that I received. And that is what you're going to be learning now. So before you continue with the course, one quick word about the community. So this community is completely designed around Linux, and you get the free Linux course here. So all I ask is that you also keep the commenting, the posts all on topic. This course, this community is about Linux, and that's what we focus on here. And we will also moderate the community. So please don't ask any unrelated questions that have nothing to do with the course material or the topic of Linux. With that being said, let's dive in and let's learn some Linux.